Hi there and welcome to the show. I'm Nancy Guppy here at the iconic Pike Place Market. One of the best parts of my job is interviewing creative people because inevitably, when an artist talks about their work, we get a glimpse into who they are and how they make sense of their world. These interviews are compelling, sometimes intense, and often quite funny, and we'd like to share a few of our favorites from this past season.
Is a story for women.
Writer-performer Susan Lieu.
My life is a trigger warning.
Filmmaker John Waters.
I consider myself in my creative work as someone who's invested in research and invested in history.
Poet Quenton Baker.
Often I try and hold the camera a little bit lower.
Street photographer Deb Achak. The music kind of just takes you.
That takes me.
Yeah.
So
And Seattle Symphony music director Thomas Dausgaard. So sit back, relax, and enjoy these highlights from 5 conversations.
What I didn't realize was that Friday, September 27th, 1996, was the last day I would ever see my mom.
An intense, deeply personal solo performance recently opened at Theater Off Jackson called 140 Pounds, How Beauty Killed My Mother. And here to talk about the story is the writer, performer, and daughter, Susan Lieu. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Nancy.
So glad you're here.
Thank you.
All right, tell us the story of 140 Pounds. What is this?
It's the story of how my mom died from plastic surgery malpractice when I was 11. She went in for a tummy tuck, the narrowing of her nostrils, and a chin implant, lost oxygen to her brain. The doctor was negligent. He didn't call 911 until 14 minutes into the surgery. She was in a coma for 5 days, and then she died.
So you were 11 years old, 22 years ago about?
Yeah, that's right.
Did you know, were you told how she died at that point?
In Vietnamese, we just use the word surgery all the time.
Oh.
So I just knew it was a surgery. But it was in the last 4 years when I started researching what happened and I wanted to track down the killer that I realized it was a series of operations, that she had a history of operations.
And you didn't know that?
No, I didn't. I had no idea, and my family didn't want to talk about it.
So did you have additional information other than your memories of what happened? How did you put this together?
You know, I started asking my dad about what happened. He didn't really remember. He didn't know who he worked with, the lawyers. He didn't know the name of the doctor. I wanted to find old records. And so I started reading through hundreds, thousands of pages of depositions, reading even my own depositions when I was a teenager, and finding out what happened, you know, and piecing it together, working with the old lawyers. It's been, I feel like I'm on CSI, but it's actually my life. The law firm gave me the name of the doctor, Dr. Leslie Mluglin. Then I began my CSI investigation with what my dad likes to call Google.
So you play everything, 8 characters,
That's right.
and it's all pretty much your immediate family, right? Siblings, mom and dad, and
Aunties.
And your young self and your
That's right.
and your current self. So how do you separate, or do you, Susan the performer and Susan the daughter? How do you separate those two?
I'm still the same person.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm in the middle of the rehearsals, I'm reliving the trauma of my 7 family members over and over again. You know, there's this one scene where I'm in the hospital and I'm talking to my mom and I'm asking her to come back. You know, growing up, she used to say, "Hey, when you go to college, I'll move in with you."
Oh.
And so I'm begging her to come back so we can go to college together one day. And I'm crying and crying. And then I gotta run the scene again and make sure the blocking's done again. And then when I come home, I'm tired.
Yeah. The level of skill, all the skills that you're using, it's very layered. It's extremely layered. Well, the surgeon, I know he was charged with medical negligence. Is that
That's right.
correct? You refer to him, obviously, as a killer. How do you deal with your sense of unfairness? Because essentially you're saying he got away with this.
Oh, yeah, he did.
How do you deal with that internally?
I mean, how do we forgive anybody?
Yeah.
Right?
Great question.
I mean, so basically what happened is after my mom died, he lost his license for 4 years. It was suspended, and then he essentially kept practicing for the rest of his life.
Wow.
And so for me, I was very angry. I started fantasizing about a multi-pronged marketing campaign, targeted Facebook ads just to him, a billboard by his clinic, an expose in his local paper. I wanted him to never mess with Vietnamese people ever again. This was how I was going to avenge my mother's death. So I called my dad to get more information.
So we're learning about the details about the tragedy and obviously a much deeper understanding of your mother. How do you see your mom now? What's your take on her currently?
For a long time, I would go back to Vietnam every few years, and everyone sees her as this like mythical, heroic figure. Like she escaped Vietnam after 6 attempts with my dad, came to America within 8 years, bought their first home, nail salons. My dad had a gardening service, sponsored over all our family members. At one point we were 13 people living in a 4-bedroom house.
Man.
It was the Vietnamese refugee experience, right? And so everyone sees her as this hero, but she was always this mystery to me. And I think by doing all this research, and the show has become a forcing function to actually ask different questions to my dad and to my aunties and to my siblings. And they all respond in different ways, which you'll see in the show. And so now she's this 3-dimensional figure to me, right? Like, she died when I was 11, and I only had a handful of memories, 15 memories of her, really.
Right.
And then now I see all her flaws. I see all her perfections. I see her beauty. And I really hope I can see how I'm like her, too.
We'll kick off with writer-director John Waters, the man behind such fabulous films as Crybaby, Pink Flamingos, Hairspray, and Serial Mom. John is also a seasoned live performer and is bringing his wildly entertaining Christmas show to the Neptune Theater stage. I spoke with John on the phone earlier this week about appropriate gifts, picky eaters, and his version of the Holy Trinity. Hi, John Waters?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Nancy Guppy. Hey, so before we start out, I know you're a very snazzy dresser, so I just want to get a visual in my mind. What are you wearing for this interview?
Well, I have on a striped turtleneck from Brooks Brothers, a pair of 501 jeans, Paul Smith socks, and regular Van black slip-on tennis shoes. So I'm not dressed as me totally today.
But that is a good look. I can imagine it in my mind. All right, so your holiday extravaganza, A John Waters Christmas Filthier and Merrier, returns to Seattle December 5th, much to the delight of your fanatical fans.
And it'll be completely new again. Every year I write an almost completely new one.
Which
is a great burden.
Yeah, that is a burden. That was my question. It's a brand new show from start to finish every year.
I would say 95%. I mean, the skeleton may be the same. I might have one year said it's a good time for criminals, but I'll tell all new criminal stories that I did at the other one. So yeah, I'm almost done. I got one more day writing it, and then I have to memorize it. That's the scariest thing. 70 minutes that you have to memorize.
So you have it down to, is every word locked in?
Yeah, it always is.
Oh my God. That's a big.
And I'm on stage with no notes.
That's very impressive, I have to say. What were your Christmases like growing up?
Very nice and traditional and very functional. The only thing that was weird about it is the Santa in the neighborhood that came to visit the children down when everybody sang Christmas carols was obviously the man that lived 3 doors up the street. They should have gotten somebody from a different neighborhood. I was always confused because I went to Catholic Sunday school, and so I thought, is Jesus and Mary and the Tooth Fairy, are they all one thing? Is that the Holy Trinity? I was confused about, was Mary on the roof? Was baby Jesus up there with Santa? They seemed like they were all fictitious characters. Well, no, sort of, or at least cult characters. They were all cult characters, definitely.
When did you get clarification that they weren't all the same thing?
I still think maybe they are. I talk about that on my show.
Excellent.
It's my version of the Holy Trinity.
In these politically correct times, the word Christmas can be a, quote, trigger word. Did you consider calling your show a John Waters holiday?
No, I did not. My life is a trigger warning. My entire show is a trigger warning.
Do you have any favorite holiday rituals currently?
Well, I talk about how I'd like the rituals I'd like to do that don't have the nerve in the show, like extreme caroling. Well, I have a Christmas party every year that I've had forever. I have Christmas decorations, but they're all altered. I mean, they're versions of traditional Christmas decorations, but marred in some way. I mean, I decorate the Unabomber birdhouse on my mantle. things like that.
Now, hey, we have a lot of John Waters fans in the show that I do. It's called Art Zone, so in the Art Zone office, and they asked me if to get your holiday advice. Would you be willing to give some advice from a few questions? Okay, so this is from Vince, our director, okay? I'm hosting Christmas dinner this year, and one of the guests is gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegan. Should I cook them a separate meal?
No, I tell them to eat before they came. Or really, if you have that many food allergies, bring it with you. You know, if someone's having all those people to dinner, I don't think it's fair to expect them to cook something especially for you.
All right, this is from Rosemary, producer. My stepmother is extremely hard to shop for. Is it okay if I give her a gift card?
Well, to me, gift cards means that you think the person is stupid and has no interest. So I am violently against gift cards unless it's to liquor stores or pornographic stores that are going out of business.
Got it. All right, Peggy, our editor. I've been invited to a holiday gift exchange party. What would you recommend as a good white elephant present?
It depends on the person. If it was a liberal, give them Trump's book. But don't buy it new, find it in a thrift shop. The opposite of what they would like as a joke, yes. Give them something you know they'd hate.
All right, last question. Your new book, Mr. Know-It-All, The Tarnished Wisdom of a Filth Elder, is available in print and as a book on tape, read by you, right?
Yeah.
Which is a great gift, by the way. Would you leave us with a pearl of wisdom from your years of filth study?
Only tell people you love them when they're asleep. They hear it, you can't be disappointed, and it does not demand an answer.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much, John Waters. We look forward to seeing you in December.
All righty, thank you.
Okay, take care. First of all, a museum exhibit, the first ever. Congratulations, crew.
Thank you.
You can all clap. Congratulations. It's a big deal.
Thank you.
So, Quenton, let's start with what Ballast is based on, right? The 1841 slave revolt aboard the ship Creole. Tell me that story. I'm unfamiliar with this story.
Yeah, so in 1841, by then the United States had banned the transatlantic slave trade. So what was taking place was called the coastwise or secondary slave trade, where people were being sold from the upper South, further south. So the Creole was one of those ships. In 1841, it departed from Virginia on its way to New Orleans. And it was 19 people led by a man named Madison Washington, which is kind of absurd. But Madison Washington and 18 other people commandeered the ship and forced the crew to pilot it to Nassau, because Nassau was a British colony and Britain had abolished the slave trade. So anyone who landed on British soil was not recognized as chattel.
As a slave, they were free.
Right.
Wow, wow. When you learned this story, how did that feel to you?
Well, I think the thing that stuck out was that I hadn't heard about it.
Yeah, right.
I consider myself like, I don't have a PhD in history, but I consider myself in my creative work as someone who's invested in research and invested in history. And so the fact that I hadn't come across what was the only successful large-scale revolt involving American-born enslaved people ever was kind of, I was like, what? So it really just sparked my curiosity to figure out more, as much as I could, about what happened.
Yeah. So the revolt inspired you to create this exhibit. Includes new poems, right, as well as historical documents that you have altered using a poetic technique called erasure. So first, what are the historical documents that you used, and then explain or describe erasure?
Yeah, so the documents are Senate records from the second session of the 27th Congress in 1842. They're depositions and they're letters back and forth from members of the US government and members of the British government in Nassau, just that detail all of the proceedings. Because what happened after the ship ran aground in Nassau was that the United States sued Britain for a loss of cargo. So
loss of the people, i.e. cargo, gotcha.
Right, so they sued them for, I think, $200,000. So these documents were critical to that court case, and they were critical to like how the United States was adjudicating itself in this Creole affair.
Right.
So it's the only living record, and it's a record from a dominant perspective, and a perspective that's invested in a certain outcome, in this case, like winning the court case.
We want our stuff, right.
So I wanted to apply this technique, this erasure technique or redaction, because to me, it was a way to excavate this lost speech. There was 135 people that gained their freedom. No one went and talked to anyone. No one went and recorded Madison, Washington's version of events. So this was the only speech.
Way to get the story. When you are doing the erasure or the redaction, how do you choose the words or the phrases that you want people, like anyone who comes to the exhibit, to see?
Yeah, so this is, there's a lot of different ways that one could go about it. For me, it was looking for then something that would echo the kind of utterances that were lost, the kind of perspectives and interiority that was ignored and that people were uninterested in, or rather required to not exist. So really it was about finding language that, to me, got at that sense of recovery or that sense of redress.
Why did you choose the title of Ballast? What does that mean for this exhibit?
So ballast ballast is still in use today. It just means that it's the placeholder weight for cargo. And so in the 1840s, for human cargo, they would have used most likely large iron bars. And the bars are loaded into the ships, they get into the port, the bars are taken out, and the cargo is loaded on. And so partially, I chose ballast because of how benign it is, to highlight the fact that a ship full of people is just a cargo ship. It had a standard manifest, a standard form that was filled out with names and ages and skin tones, like any other manifest would have been. So there's the banality of it. But also there's the component of the concept of counterweight and the ways in which historically and currently Blackness and Black people are asked and, well, commanded to be counterweight for our own destruction, or a placeholder for our own destruction. The controlling image of Black people as violent and as aggressive and as dangerous becomes the very excuse and the very reason why you could die. So that concept of ballast, that concept of the counterweight, of a placeholder for your own kind of freight, for that kind of weight, also came into play.
In 2018, I stumbled upon an extraordinary exhibit of photography, and when I found out that the artist lived local, I said, we gotta get her on Art Zone, and we have got her, and here she is, Deb Achak, everybody. Yay!
Thank you,
I'm
Nancy.
so glad you're here. Okay, so the exhibit that I saw, it featured warm weather beach and water photos, and what grabbed me was how visceral they were. I could feel the heat, I could feel the water, I felt like I was there. And that really is due in part to the way you shoot, and it's a process that you call aquatic street photography.
That's right.
Is that right? So that's a really intriguing phrase, so unpack that for me. What does that mean?
I put my camera in a housing, and I go to crowded beaches.
And a housing is something like
a waterproof housing where I can manipulate my camera and do all the things I need to do, but bring a beautiful camera with beautiful lenses into the water.
Got it.
And I frequent crowded, colorful public beaches and capture people having joy, experiencing the water from the vantage point of the water, using all the techniques that street photographers use, but I'm actually swimming while I capture the images.
So do you not, you want them to know you're taking the photo, you don't want them to know? I mean, you said you can get close. How close?
As close as possible, really. But I prefer, my style is that people not know I'm there.
Right.
And when I say close, I mean my photograph, the selfie that was shot in Positano, I've got subjects really, really close to the camera, and then the entire city of Positano, in the background of the photo.
Since you're not holding the camera up to your eye, how do you compose the shot?
I do a lot of holding it up to my eye to compose.
Okay.
kind of understand what's in the frame
Right.
and what I'm seeing. Of course, I'm reading the light and all of the things that are important for composition. But then often I try and hold the camera a little bit lower.
That's what I
that
thought.
relaxes people a little bit. It's down here, they're not as uncomfortable. As soon as you raise a camera to your eyes, people become very alert.
They freeze up too.
And I just love the imagery of holding it at my heart. Because this is not, this isn't satire. I'm not trying to make people look foolish. I really love my subjects, and so the idea of sort of shooting from the heart, I really like that.
I feel a real emotional difference between the shots with people in them and then more the nature, purely nature. Do you know what I mean by that? There's a difference emotionally, and how would you, if you do, how would you describe that?
So you're referring the difference between ebb and flow and the
Yes.
aquatic street, completely different.
Yeah.
But interestingly, almost always taken in the same location.
Right.
So one is I'm pointing the camera towards the water and capturing the water's movement and that interplay between the surface of the water and my camera lens. And the way that moves, that's something I can't control, which I love. I love that element of surprise. And those are meant to be really an intimate experience for the viewer. They're a very intimate experience for me. And I want the viewer to feel that they're submerged by the water.
In it. Right.
In the water.
Right.
And to see all the little subtle nuances of the surface of the water, I'm just really fascinated by that. So yes, that has a completely different feel than when I turn the camera back towards the beach and swim in closer to people and capture them having fun.
And what are you trying to capture with the people?
Joy.
Joy.
I think at the root of my work is joy. Yeah, and there's something about the way people interact in the water. They're all there to relax, to play. It's such a beautiful experience that I really think what I'm capturing is joy. I'm in my joy while I'm doing it as well.
Your photos, to me, they're nostalgic, and there's a yearning quality. That picture of kids swimming, and I think it's called The Queue, right?
Yeah.
It's sweet and sad to me at the same time. And so when you create a photo, is there a particular thing, or also joy, but is there something else you're trying to communicate to people or to the world? Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. So that's an interesting photograph because I wasn't intending to get that one, and that's one of those lucky, amazing experiences that street photographers have.
Yeah.
My son was climbing up on that rock with those kids, and he was a little bit anxious. And so that's me being a mom. I was in that position, but I could see through my viewfinder that I had something really special.
Wow.
And that was that lineup of people marching from one corner of the frame all the way up to the top.
Underwater, up above the water, yeah.
And there's something about suspension in water. I think average bodies, normal bodies, just look so poetic and so beautiful in the water. These aren't models. These are everyday people, and everyone just looks so held by the water. People have often said water is the ultimate surrender, but where I happen to shoot, I think it's the ultimate engagement. People are really engaged with the water.
As chief conductor of the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra and conductor laureate of the Swedish Chamber Orchestra, as well as being an international guest conductor, Danish sensation Thomas Dausgaard has electrified musicians and audiences around the globe. Now that he's at the helm of the Seattle Symphony, the AZ crew and I invited him for a chat over a friendly game of cornhole. All right, we got our beanbags, cornhole, I got my questions. You ready to do this thing?
I'm ready.
Okay, you're gonna go first. Let's see, what do you got? Ooh, not bad, not bad. Let's see another one. Yes. Oh, very close. Okay, so you're very well known to Seattle audiences. You've guest conducted here many, many times. What was the appeal of making this a permanent gig?
That I could come here and play cornhole with you, I think. Yeah. And then it was that there is a wonderful orchestra here in town.
Yeah.
There is a wonderful hall, I
Yeah.
think one of the best in North America. And there is a great audience. And then when I look out the windows here, I can see the Puget Sound and the fantastic nature close by, and I love that.
You love it, being surrounded by it. You're leading top flight musicians. What's it like when everything, cornhole! You got high five? Yes. Okay, no, okay, I got us off track there, it was so exciting.
It was.
First one, go ahead. Almost. Okay, Now, so I was asking you is, you're leading these amazing musicians. What's it like when everything is clicking? It's just, you're in the groove.
Well, that is magic, of course. That is, you are outside yourself somehow, and time is suspended. Time is such an important factor in our lives, and we are when we are preparing for things here. Of course, we are in incredibly strict time frames. Down to the second, we have to stop.
Right.
It is so regulated, and that is fine, and it has to be like that. But when we then are in the concert and in the music, yes, time is.
People hear Seattle Symphony, just the public. What do you want them, what do you hope they will think?
That they are inspired by what they hear and how they feel us in the room. That the whole experience is taking them out of their normal life and giving them something extra. That it's an enrichment deep inside. That is the most important.
I'm sweating, by the way, are you? I'm actually sweating. I mean, I didn't know this was such a workout.
No, music will make me sweat more.
Yeah. So is there a artist or musician, living or dead, who you would really like to meet?
Yeah,
or hang out with? Even?
I think for so many years I wanted to meet Beethoven. It almost sounds trivial, but I think so much of my fascination with this kind of music comes from the energy and the power within his music, and to just experience him as a human being, to get a sense of what he really was like. If I asked him a simple question, I would love to have had that opportunity. Yeah.
All right, final question. We both obviously have very good hair, clearly. What is your hair care regimen, your process?
That's a difficult question. You expect me to know?
Yeah, because it's really great.
Oh.
Because like when you're conducting and it is just, your hair is just
That's the
fantastic.
Best?
No, it's not the best, but it's a great part of the peak action of you.
Right.
Yeah.
Good
Anyway,
to know.
yeah.
I'll watch out what it is.
Okay,
I haven't paid enough attention.
Maybe pay attention, then maybe you can email.
Do you have a recommendation?
Well, I don't think you need a recommendation from me. You're looking so good. All right. Well, here's the deal. I can't win this game because that would be like winning at your birthday party, and then that's really tacky and weird, and you know. So.
But you did win. You
maybe
did.
technically, but I think spiritually you won, and there's a prize for you. Rosemary, can I get the prize? This is a prize. So I don't know if you've ever had one of these.
Oh yes, I like that.
Oh, you do. Do you want to do it? Do it on your head. Okay.
Time stands still. It's like music.
Isn't that incredible? Yeah.
Very nice.
Isn't it? It's like you get into a daze.
Absolutely.
A haze. Lost in the moment.
Where am I? Yeah.
Where are you? Hey, will you do it on, will you do it on me? Okay, you know my head. Okay. Yeah. Oh my God.
It is good.
Oh, Thomas, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's lovely to meet you.
And you.
You're a star. You're a star. All right.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed 5 Conversations. You can watch more artist interviews on our website. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Oh, Rusty!
Hi, Nancy.
Hello, darling. Well, Rusty, by the way, was on our the first season of Art Zone, so 10 years, which is
10 years
so
ago.
it's perfect. So you're kind of bookending our first 10. You're sending off into our second.
Happy to do it.
Now you've made us a cake, aluminum. So tell me about this cake. What the components?
This is an anniversary cake made all in aluminum with aviation rivets and a flamethrower.
And a flamethrower. And aren't these pretty? Look at that gorgeous decor right there. It's beautiful. Okay, let's do it. Oh, no, that's pretty, right? It's just a normal little flame. No big deal, little candle.
Anniversary cake.
Happy anniversry.
It'll be
But
fine.
then, let's go to 11, shall we? Yes! I'm gonna do my little cheer. Yay! Art Zone! 10 years! We did it! We did it! Yay! Woohoo! I'm gonna dance around it. Excuse me, Vince. Let's watch it. I'm really tough, aren't I?
Yes.
Let's see you do that.
Pressure.
Oh, nice. Vince, you want to do it? No. I'm a pyro.
Everyone's a pyro.
Yeah,
Pretty much
everyone's a pyro.
Yeah.
this bodes well for our next 10 years. By the way, the 20th gift is fine china.
Oh, nice.
So that's what you'll be doing, some kind of fine
Fine
china.
china with
And a
flamethrower.
flamethrower.
Yeah.
Ish. Maybe more than one.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Why stop with one?
Why stop with one?
It's easy to make a plural.